Welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of Voices of Influence. And today we're going to be talking about the same topic that we've been talking about for the last few episodes, which is about social selling and that thought leadership building and how to get startups from 0 to 1. But today we're going to be talking with a very interesting person who is the co-founder of Warmly. Alan Zhao is here with us. He is the click-through king, as he calls himself. Alan, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thank you, Arun.
Awesome. So straight up, I want to know a little bit more about Warmly. Tell us more about what inspired you to start the company.
Yeah, so I was starting a restaurant at the time actually with my best friend from high school, and then
No
we were
way.
cooking Vietnamese hot soup in the middle of Dallas, Texas, which is probably not the smartest idea, honestly. Hot soup, summer, heat doesn't quite well go together, but it was a fun experience. Learned a lot. Then COVID happened. Went out to SF.
Mm,
Went to this founders fellowship program called On Deck. Met
mm,
Max, thinking about this other idea I wanted to make, which was like a voice POS system. We met through a hackathon. We hacked on this project called Control Life, which is where this viewer can vote on what the streamer does next. And we hacked it in like a
mm,
day. Max was the streamer, so he would go around
mm,
SF, basically doing what people on Reddit want him to do. But of course, we would curate the prompts and topics so he doesn't eat his own shoe. But that was really cool. And so we just kept on hacking on different projects. 4 pivots later, and we're at where Warmly is today.
mm. That's interesting. So almost hacked through many different projects. So it wasn't like oh my God, this is a problem that I saw in the world and I need to solve for it. But you were seeing it at every stage. What are the different fun problems that needs to be solved, and you were solving for that. Tell me more about what Warmly is, and in general about how AI and this whole go to market and this is evolving right now, and how Warmly plays a role there.
Yeah, so we Warmly was our fourth pivot. The one before that was a Zoom app. At the time, Zoom
Hmm.
had in 2020, Zoom had 300 million daily active users. So we thought, if we just build a Zoom app, that's a pretty good idea. Get a percentage of that user base, and then maybe we could do something interesting. Classic founder trap is to pursue the product or the idea or the feature or the technology. In our case, it was the
Hmm.
platform, the Zoom App Store. We weren't really chasing the problem. But what we found was when we finally built the Zoom app, it was very difficult to sell, of course,
Right.
and to generate leads for, especially coming in towards the end of 2022. And
Hmm.
so, uh, just even discussing it with an advisor of ours, his name is Jordan Crawford. I remember on a call with him, I was like, "What do you think about how would we sell this?" And Jordan was like, "Look, man, let me be honest with you. A deal will not closed because someone did not have their Zoom name tags on.
Hmm.
So you need to go and be an SDR to actually get a feel for what salespeople have to go through to see what their
Hmm.
problems are." So I took that to heart. I became an SDR at a portfolio company that we share the same investor, NFX, called Octo. And I flew myself out to Cabo where their head of sales was so I can see firsthand how this person fires, hires. Literally, I was just watching interviews, does lead gen, forces their sales reps to update the CRM. I was also an SDR trying to book meetings. My whole pitch was I'm the CTO Warmly, and I think I could help out by automating some of the lead gen process. Let me see what I can come out with. And in doing so, can I also learn about how sales works? So it's a good trade off. And I'm not going to cost anything. I'm doing this for free. So I took time off to do that.
Hmm.
I even told the co-founders, just one day I woke up and said, I'm just going to do this thing. It was very
Whoa.
abrupt, not even very premeditated, but they were like, that's cool. All right, 2 weeks. Let us know what you find. So I did that, came back, and I found that the classic go-to-market problem is obviously, what do you say? Who do you say it to? And then when do you say it? With the
Hmm.
what do you say and the who largely being solved by Zoom info and outreach. But the
Hmm.
when has been the big question that has remained unanswered.
Hmm.
And so Octo, they sell end of life industrial equipment. And
Hmm.
basically, 2 times out of the year, when a plant is about to shut down, is when everyone needs to get rid of all their excess industrial equipment because you can't just leave it there. So it's like a fire sale mode. We need to get rid of it. That's when the
Hmm.
hair on fire problem becomes huge. Now, if you knew when that was happening, then you would sell it immediately. It's like having a hot dog stand outside of a bar at 2 a.m. If you knew when these people were walking out drunk, you were going to sell out your hot dog stand. If you knew, it almost
Right.
didn't matter what you said. The fact that you had this category of product, it doesn't matter if you personalize it. It just matters that they're hungry. So
Mm.
we realized that the most important question was when, never been solved before. And we looked into the market and see like who's kind of got it, who's got the right angle of approach. And we started building a product around that based off researching the competitive landscape, what we were good at, what we could conceivably build. And that's when me and this other engineer just decided to work on the Skunkworks project, uh, separate from our name tags product. And we did that for about a
Mm.
quarter with the goal of getting to 100K ARR to prove this out. And we did that in a quarter. So
Mm.
then we started migrating the rest of the team over, and that's how we got to where we're at today.
That is interesting. So 0 to 100K in like a quarter, and then that like formed the basis of what you're doing. I really like how you distilled like the what, how, and the when you're like trying to sell over here, and like you're focusing pretty much on the when part of it right now. And in general, right? Like I think like the challenges of in 2024 right now, right? Like getting a product from 0 to 1 is like incredibly like different from what it was like maybe even like a few years ago. You know, back then, like 2013, 2015, 2016, maybe like, you know, like it was all about cold email, outreach, different like touch points and everything. How do you see that this world has changed? What is working? What was working before that's now working? And what is now working that you didn't think was working before?
What's interesting is that all the time people say cold is dead
Right.
or mass outreach is not working anymore. It's not that cold is dead. It's just that it's become a lot harder. And of course, people are
Right.
numb to it. That's the truth. People are
Right.
definitely numb to it. But if they're hungry, they're still going to
Right.
respond to you. So if you find that they're hungry and you're reaching out cold, that's still okay, as long as you knew
Mm.
that they had a need for your product. So it's not that cold outreach is dead. It's our view is like, if you can get them when they're hungry, it's still going to work. So, anyways,
Mm.
people will say that cold outreach is dead because of Yahoo and Google bulk email send policy, because of all the infrastructure you need to put together. It's just become a lot harder to make it work. And plus,
Mm.
buyers are carpet bombed and they're numb to cold emails. We move over to LinkedIn, you have some credibility there, but they'll be numb to it as well. We're reaching the
Right.
end for a lot of these like every single marketing tactic has a shelf life. And I think
Right.
we're reaching the ends to some of them, like sequencing. Uh,
Right.
300,000 emails a month is probably pretty difficult to do.
Mm.
But if you're just targeting 3,000 of the ones, let's say like you
Mm.
had it perfect, if you just target 3,000 of the ones that were in market, that's infrastructure wise a lot less costly to build. And it might
Mm.
even yield like similar or just as good results. So it costs
Right.
less, you're not burning through domains, you're not pissing people off, and you still get the people who are in market to buy, which is what you want to saturate before you go out and do all these brand things.
I like it. And so tell me more about like your specific example there, right? Like you said from 0 to 100K ARR in like a quarter or so. What techniques worked for you? I mean, I know that like you actually like um, understood the problem very deeply, which is probably half the problem solved because most people don't do that. But like still there is a question of like getting enough people out there. I mean, getting enough calls and like getting through to like enough decision makers. What worked for you? What did you do?
Yeah, in the very beginning, it was it was pretty guerrilla, and I'm not ashamed of how we did this, but basically, we didn't have a website. It was just like I said, me and the other engineer, and we needed a way to quickly get uh, beta customers. And so we were just thinking, like, how can
Mm.
we get beta customers? We got this tool. It was basically LinkedIn automation, and allows you to connect automatically, like basically get a LinkedIn Sales Navigator search query, hear all the people.
Right.
Last post is 90 days ago. Their job title, their function, everything matches up perfectly. Put that into the sales automation tool. Start connecting, liking a post, endorsing a skill, and then on
Mm.
connection request, you add a message. And the message was basically, hey, we're a YC Felicis NFX backed company. We're looking for some advisors. It's equity compensated. And
Mm.
the idea is like, yeah, it is equity compensated. But we're able to give out micro grants. So depending on like how we can do this, and the whole point is if you see value in the product, and we of course like here's our value proposition. If you see value in our product, then I think we're brand aligned and we can grow together because you might have this problem within your own company and you could be a great ambassador for us down the road. And so the
Mm.
conversion rate for that was like through the roof. People just wanted to meet
Mm.
because they wanted, to be advisors. And so we booked a lot of meetings that way. And the goal was just to get them to see the product. Because the moment that some
Mm.
of them saw it, they realized like, oh yeah, that actually does make sense. And at the price point
Right.
at which we were offering it, because we were not trying to heavily monetize it yet, We were offering for 500
Mm.
bucks a month. At that price point,
Mm.
a lot of these VPs of sales and marketing at stage, like 0 or 10 to 50 person size companies, they would be like, okay, that's fine. Let's just try it out. And the offer was
Right.
like, you get for 3 months, 500, so 1,500, your money back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied. So we just wanted to
Mm.
try it. Just Alex Hormozy, $100 million offer. How much do you make off of one deal? Okay, 10,000. What's 1,500 bucks? We could probably get you a couple leads that convert 10,000 in 3 months. So we did that, and that was 90% of our pipeline. We didn't do anything
Wow.
else. We tried
Mm.
email. I tried emailing my alumni, and lucky fine, that would get us some meetings, but just because of affiliation with the
Right.
same alma mater. But no, this was good because they so we got the VPs on, and they were happy to try it out, and when it worked out, they became case studies.
Love it. No, I think that's actually really good. So your goal was to like get that first
That's it.
interest, see the product, and then let the product do the magic for you. I really like that idea. That sounds brilliant. I know that since then, like, you are like LinkedIn, like, or cold LinkedIn outreach is where you started, but since then, like, you've gone on to like build your own brand on LinkedIn, like, amassing followers as well as like leadership. Tell me a little bit more about that journey as to like why you started it, or like did you start that like organically, or like building that founder brand and like leadership brand for thought leadership?
Yeah, this is a really good one because to be completely honest, like our co-founding team, we're not go-to-market backgrounded people. When we were going
Mm,
through TechStars in 2020, we didn't know what customer success was. We didn't know anything about sales, and it's kind of the charm too. It even says in our TechCrunch article, it's like we just thought that a lot of these things should be automated because we typically come from engineering backgrounds. Karina was an
yeah.
engineering manager at Google, Max was a PM, and then I was I was the engineer at Warmly, and so we never had done sales. So once we started getting into these conversations, let's fast forward like 2 quarters in, basically 2 quarters in, we're past 25 beta customers. We have case studies. Now we're coming up against our actual competitors like Drift and Qualified. And people started asking us, like, what's the difference between Warmly and Drift and Qualified? And we
Mm,
would say, yeah, we're like a fraction of the price. That's a pretty big
mm,
difference, right? And we thought that would be enough. But then we started to realize, no, because Qualified does these things and they'll always say, like, but they do this. And then the brand, and like, I don't know because I'm not sure. You guys are nobodies. And I have to rip and replace. And like, if this doesn't work out, it's on me. So all these things started cropping up, and they wouldn't say it outright. But at the end of the
mm,
day, when I started to, like, I was in sales calls too, I started to notice that when people come into meetings, they had a frame of mind where they didn't know what this product was. We didn't have any brand credibility associated with us. And so it took like a good salesperson to change that mindset.
mm.
I was not a good salesperson. I know that for sure. I'm
Right.
not.
That's interesting.
I
Yeah.
got lucky with showing the product. The product's cool. It does the selling for me. But once you get into the conversations of this versus that, this being an established player versus us, nobody, it takes a really good salesperson. So absent me being a good salesperson and some of the other people in the company being not as good salespeople, we learned what good sales looked like when we got Keegan on board. Then we just started to realize, like, to lift all the boats up, you want to have the mindset shift of what the buyer is thinking before they even enter the meeting. How cool would it be
Mm,
is this thing is like halfway sold by the time they entered, and they just needed to verify a few things. And that's
mm,
typically where marketing comes in, and brand and thought leadership. And I started looking into this whole idea of like, okay, well, our inbound's 15 a month, and nobody really knows who we are. I read this book called Play Bigger about category
mm,
creation. 75% of all the the spoils go to the category king, the leader. So why not try
mm,
to start your own new category? Of course, you can't just say it. You have to actually have a unique point of view that
right.
you want to create. But we tried it, and so we did it around our Series A launch announcement, and we made the whole thing, the story of there's so many intent and data tools out there and sequencing tools, um, and that's not new. But there's no tool that orchestrates on top to connect all the pieces to maximize the tech stack and the people using it. Warmly is that
Right.
first one. I mean, it does exist for maybe 6 cents demand base, but nothing for the SMB, which is 95% of all companies out there. And so that was our positioning. Went to market with it, launched, got every single sales influencer that we knew and just reached out and used the same LinkedIn automation tool to be like, hey, can you go like this comment on Max's LinkedIn?
Nice.
And so we had it was crazy. I mean, just one day I felt like we took over LinkedIn. For one day, we took over LinkedIn. Max had, I think, over 1,000 likes on his post, 150,000 impressions by the end of it. Never seen that before.
Nice.
And so
Nice.
suddenly, inbound shot from 15 to 139 in less than a quarter, month over month. So we knew that that was successful, and then we basically doubled down since then on LinkedIn, because we knew that in order to win this space, you have to win LinkedIn and the hearts and minds of people on LinkedIn. So we started, anybody who mentions us on LinkedIn, I'm watching that thing like a hawk, basically. If they mention our product, if they sign up for free, I say, like, do you want to collaborate on LinkedIn content? And we have all this. We basically we would amplify their posts and create video content together, create case studies together, build up their own brand, especially if they're independent agencies. They're like a solo independent marketing agency. Then perhaps they actually have intent-based signal selling as their core branding anyways. And so to align it to us, we would create content together. They'd create a video like, this is how I use Warmly, or this is why intent-based selling is important. It helps them. And as Warmly's brand grows, then their brand grows too. Their business increases. So now we have this web of people in our network, like 100 people in a Google sheet, that every single day will message me a LinkedIn post that they did, and then I would comment on it. And by commenting on it, my followers would see their stuff, and one day they will also, of course, if we do a big product launch, we'll do the same thing. And that's how we're able to organically just kind of build our sphere of influence, and the echoes of which, like, now it's sort of more or less they're doing it all on their own. So it's really cool, actually. Yeah.
This is incredible. I think like your process, or like you form this sort of community of co-collaborators, or like and like you're investing in each other's success, and like using LinkedIn as a way to like drive each other's brand awareness over here. Is this something that like you're doing solely for your company, or is like your entire team invested in this? I know that like you mentioned that like one day it's there, like how did like, is everybody bought in on this strategy that like all exec or like even every employee of Warmly has to have a LinkedIn presence and like use your team's influence?
Yeah, Max came up with this idea of getting a LinkedIn influencers, because originally we were just wanting to say, Max, let's have you be the face of Warmly, and then you're going to be a LinkedIn influencer. And yeah, it worked out great. So he grew his follower base in a quarter from like 10 to 20,000. So he doubled. Kind of nuts, off of 3 viral posts, essentially. It was 100,000, 150,000 impressions, and then 200,000 impressions. So amazing. It just took those 2 posts, and then he basically doubled his follower count. And we thought that was really cool. Talking to some go-to-market leaders in the space who are doing something similar, it's better to have more faces, associated with their brand, because then you hear it from an SDR, you hear it from his head of sales. So he had this idea of, we're going to create this LinkedIn influencer group, and we need a name. So we called ourselves the Revenue Rebels. We had an AE, we had an SDR who had a following. We had our head of sales, Keegan, who's become pretty popular these days in the in-person communities. He's the sales cowboy. And then me on marketing, and we would just post every single day. Every day we would post, or at least every other day. And naturally, you hear it from Desanka, you hear it from Catherine, from me, from Keegan. We have different voices representing Warmly. Not just buy our stuff, but this is how we think about marketing. And naturally, how we talk about it always somehow feeds back into the problem that we're solving. No matter what we'll talk about things that are very useful, of course, because LinkedIn is going to prioritize that content. But it's going to be like, the problem is time. Not ever heard of a sales leader that said, I have enough time? No, I've never. I never have enough time. Here's how I solve for that. And you rattle. And by the way, Warmly also helps later on to help orchestrate all these pieces, so your reps can save time. You can get more out, maximize tech stack, yada yada.
I love it. I think the idea of like bringing your entire team, and now you've created this sort of machine. Tell me more about like, now is that this content strategy and inbound like sort of media, is that like playing like one of the biggest portions of like your market, or are you still doing outbound emails, or like what is the current split? I would say, like, obviously you started with like cold LinkedIn, but like how is it right now?
Yeah, so we're still running all that stuff, like the LinkedIn automation, the third-party intent-based automation, where you get third-party buyer intent signals of people researching our competitors or keywords. That spurs like outreach sequences. That's actually become less about sequences and more of a manual process. Like we're trying to
Mm,
highly personalize this, right? Because we've seen
mm,
that personalization actually, you know, even when you consider like more emails being sent from outbound sequences automation versus personal emails being sent, personal has been outperforming.
mm,
So the people of Warmly in the sales development roles are personalizing. There are sequences for ones that are less hot, and that's what we
mm,
advocate for. If they're not as hot, then like yes, put them in a sequence. If they're not the VP or the CRO, if they're maybe an SDR, they're okay, fine, put them in a sequence. But for certain people, definitely personalize. So all this stuff, this orchestration, what I'm talking about, all the LinkedIn and that's targeting people in market, that's all in the sales world.
got it.
So sales is like maximizing, and we'll do competitor sequences for rip and replaces and all these intent-based triggers to sequence out and then also call and follow up. Like Keegan's got that on lock. So the next thing,
Right.
let's just assume that we've sort of like hit up our TAM and we're consistently hitting them up at the cadence that we should be, who are in market, who we believe are in
Right.
market. If that's saturated, the next step up is okay, let's double down on content. And
Right.
let's see if we can build this media empire. Like content would be for
Right.
SEO, for search content that converts. And then I had this belief that like video content is going to be really big. And the way that you
Right.
consume is not going to be as much text. It will be text too,
Right.
but the way that people want to consume content could just be videos. And so anything that's a blog post, turn into a video and do something similar to what Hockey Stack did, which is B2B Netflix, and then
Oh
create a
yeah.
page that is dedicated towards where people can binge your content and then drive traffic to that page. It's also the
Right.
page where our podcast is hosted. It's also the page where you can learn about our product and how we think about it and all of our competitors and all the playbooks that we have. And then people that we bring on who are influencers who create their own content about RevOps strategy. It's all going to be right there. And that will
Damn.
hopefully help to build a brand. Yeah.
No, I really like that. Like I think like the whole inbound media, like Hockey Stack is a great example of having like your own content that you're driving traffic towards. I really like it. The content production part of it is obviously something that takes a lot of effort and time as well. So maybe share with us like your personal content production strategy, right? Like I mean, not how you distribute it or like how you're doing it, but just the production of good quality content and like the mix of different types of content and everything.
Yeah. So it started with blog posts. Get 3 to 5
Mm,
blog posts out. It's the classic keywords. Try to rank for 100 or more monthly search volume. Make sure we cover all like the bottom of funnel content first, the ones that convert. And so the easiest, lowest hanging fruit is like competitors, warmly verse, qualified verse, top de-anonymization software tools, top demand gen tools, things where people are like they're searching for this, so there's clearly a reason. And
right.
then making that content really high quality, less
Mm,
promotionally as much as possible, actually making it very high quality and then backlinking to all the rest. So it started there, and then it started graduating and then intermixing with that with relevant news.
mm,
So first it was bottom of funnel content, and then it intermixed with relevant news as it comes up because those tend to be, you can catch a wave of impressions. So when Sales
right.
Loft acquired Drift, that was
Mm,
big news for us. I like, didn't see that
right.
coming. But we had been trying for a while. What was going on? The story behind it, and I think Max just messaged me and was like, he was in a Safari, and he was like, "Hey, I
Mm,
think you should write a blog post about sales loft versus drift acquisition, and how
mm,
this kind of plays into like where Warmly is perfectly positioned." And so I had it all in my head. I just wrote the blog post out, and it became our best performing blog post. It's like a top 3 search result if you look for sales loft drift acquisition. So like the
right.
moment you'll read like sales loft acquires drift, and then underneath it, it's like here's the analysis of what actually happened. And
Nice.
of course, it leads into like Drift is kind of an older company, and they had to move up market, under pressure to grow. They had to move to enterprise, which meant less innovation, and then now the price point's ridiculous. Enter Warmly, and so this content play became like the centerpiece for a big campaign of a rip and replace
Mm,
with Drift. And then we turned that into a video because we realized,
mm,
damn, people are interested in this. You see what I mean?
right.
So we started to see the content that people naturally were like drawn to, and then we would
Mm,
double down on that in other forms. So then I started making TikTok videos about it, posted on TikTok, this analysis of drift and what's going on with Zoom Info, who's going to be the next revenue orchestration platform. Is it going to be Zoom Info? Is it going to be Apollo who builds it himself? Zoom Info acquires it, or is it going to be something like Warmly that unifies it all together and allows you to just have the flexibility to rip and replace whatever tools you want? So just talking about it more, than putting on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, posting it on LinkedIn. People like to see faces. They're going to remember. It's like anybody can say a thing, but it just over time it starts to sound different if it's coming from a person that you start to follow, and So that's our content strategy: is find the topics that people are thinking about searching, and then double down when we see that there's some spark through the various
I love
mediums.
it. No, I think like going after keywords to start with, and then like doubling down on what's trending and what's like things that are being searched is I like it. And then just playing around with like different content types, multi-platform content and multi-channels as well. I think like you're doing some of the like the best practices like right there in like what you just spoke right now. Tell me, I mean, one last question before we go into like a rapid fire is uh, you mentioned that like almost every marketing tactic has a shelf life. Things are there. Like this whole idea of social selling is having a good moment right now, or even in its early days, I would say at this point of time, where you're leveraging like sort of social media and. So, what do you think is going on? Like, how long do you think this is going to last? And then, like, what's next in your opinion? Especially when it comes to like leveraging inbound content and everything to sell.
Yeah, the social selling thing is really interesting. I can see it starting to fall apart over time, just because LinkedIn is, of course, AI. Like you can auto comment on comments,
Right.
and then it starts to get pretty risky, right? So then anytime you see a comment, you're like, oh, how much can I really trust that? And then suddenly you've minimized the input cost to comment, which means anybody and everybody is going to be commenting on each other's posts, which means like you need a new way to find authenticity in what's actually credible. What can I believe is true? I mean, it's getting to that point. Our product is like a pretty good example of this, because I mean, inherently our AI chat, what it does is it reaches out to website visitors as if a human were reaching out. It would say things that humans would say. Hey, see you on the pricing page, have a face of the SDR who's your rep, actually, who's responsible for you, because we can tell who you are. And then that honestly is the only thing our chatbot needs to do, is just to show that it's a human. It pretends to be a human. It's kind of scary, actually. And so I can see the same thing happening with social selling. Is like, hey, do you want to collaborate on content together? I'll like your post, or I'll, we'll do these like we'll amplify each other's brands, and all this can sort of happen where you might have one video where you guys talk about it, and then after that the automation just takes over. Like anytime you post, this comment comes in from that person, it just gets out of control and it becomes noise.
Right.
So I can see that coming to an end as well. What comes next? I don't know.
No,
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
yeah, I'd love to hear you touch upon that authenticity and like how that is becoming clearly. Like you mentioned, like that really well is like people want to see that faces and that's authentic. For a fact that like that part of it is genuine and like it came from you directly, or at least you're not like using like deep fake or anything for that matter. But yeah, with exactly as you said with AI, like sort of potentially flooding the content part of it, what could potentially like be the antidote for that? Is it authenticity or is there anything else? What is next?
Maybe it's something like the blue check mark, where you have to
Right.
verify each post, some way to verify it. But even then, it's this back and forth cat and mouse game of AI against AI, and pretty soon it's just the AIs that talk to each other. So I still think that, yeah, like the only marketing moat left is brand being reputation. And so if you build your brand off of AI and these kind of hacks, then over time it's like a house of cards, it's gonna collapse on itself.
Right.
So it's the only defensible moat because of AI is your marketing brand, and brand being your reputation, and reputation being it comes from you. Imagine,
Right.
Chris Walker David's like, actually, it was just the AI talking about that. Credibility is probably gone. Probably gonna stop listening to that content. So some way to preserve that and build your brand authentically, and then partner with people who are also building your brand authentically. So then you have this this collective brand that has this distribution loop of, they'll
Mm,
push out content, your content, lose, you win. I mean, continue that circle. But still, it's
yeah,
definitely gonna be
love it. I mean, I think I like that. Obviously, you're predicting. Also, anything could happen, but at the same time, like I like your way of saying brand is like the final frontier right now. The reputation of it and like bringing that to the forefront is probably like a good winning strategy. And this is awesome. Like I know that like we've had like a lot of this. I know that like we talked about like a a quick rapid fire kind of sessions. And this is a series of questions I'm going to ask. And for each of this, there is a this or that answer you need to pick. And this is all from the perspective of just you as a startup founder. What is your style? And this is everything about like if you are like thinking about starting a company in 2024, what are some of the things that you would do? First up, how would you fund your startup? You think VC backed or bootstrap? What's the way to go?
I definitely would prefer VC backed because when you're bootstrapped, you have to do everything by hand. At a certain point, your time is not worth that. And so
Got it.
your value is probably your expertise and the knowledge that you bring about how to get stuff done. But it's anybody, maybe you hire them offshore is going to do just as good of a job as you, maybe even better. And they're far cheaper
Right.
as far as time costs go. So if you can scale that out and just implement your know-how, you can grow a lot faster. You save yourself a lot of time. And time ultimately is what kills deals and it kills companies. So if you can move faster, then do it.
Perfect. Which goes on to the next question, which is building your team. Would you build a very lean team or you would rapidly expand your team?
Oh, this one hits home pretty hard. Lean team for sure.
Okay.
I
Just
think
like a very personal thing over there. Tell me more.
because I just think that 80% of the value, it's the power laws everywhere, right, is produced by 20% of the people. And
Mm.
so as you naturally grow your team, you're growing the other 80% actually. And what you end up having to
Mm.
do is you end up having to cut and cut and cut. And when you cut more, it happens is it makes the 20% that are producers, because they have to incur more work, they become even bigger producers. So
Mm.
this natural growing and cutting and growing and cutting is leveling up your 20%. And there's also 20% of that 20% that's actually superstars that you want to grow even more. But like naturally, if you grow your team, you're growing the 80%. So definitely
Right.
would prefer lean team and managing to make sure it stays lean and stays top.
Love it. Next question. Customer acquisition strategy, organic, paid. I think I know the answer, but I'll hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think we need both. I was just under pressure to not knowing anything about marketing. Like the only thought I could do was like organic, and I was too afraid to do paid. So
Okay.
I actually think paid is a fine strategy to amplify what's working, but not knowing how to manage a budget, I just chose organic and chose to be hacky. But yeah, I think actually it's both. But I would choose organic if I had to pick one. Starting
Okay,
company.
yeah, this or that. So if you had to pick, you'd pick organic. Got it. Um, Building your product, would you DIY or would you outsource?
I probably do it yourself. At least have a engineer or head of engineering who's uh who's in house, and then for the fringe or to amplify or to extend, then yeah, we can outsource that bit.
Okay, so core team is DIY, maybe for like more smaller things. It's great. So facing roadblocks, is your intention or like is your impulse to like iterate or pivot?
When you're facing roadblocks, probably I'd probably say if I had to choose one, it's pivot. I can explain, but it's a this or that.
Yeah, it's this or that. I think like just what is your like immediate reaction is what I wanted to get out of that. So pivot is what it is.
Yep,
Got it.
pivot.
Okay. So and then of course as a startup founder, like the startup working hours, you think I'm more of a hustle kind of person or like a balance, work-life balance kind of person?
Balance.
Balance? Wow,
Yeah.
tell me more.
Okay, we're gonna double click into this one, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're too stressed, then startups is a long haul type game. Like if you're there's just while doing the startup, there's other things that will go wrong inevitably in your life outside of the startup. And
Right.
so if you drive yourself crazy, then you're just gonna throw your hands up in the air and say like, I'm gonna quit. But I can say for sure I've never been happier
Mm,
since doing Warmly. Every day is a joy. I don't feel this like I feel the stress, of course, that we're gonna run out of money. This might not be successful, but every day I'm happy to do it because I'm well rested and I think clearly
mm.
and I'm passionate about it. And I found balance in other ways. If there was nothing else and I just had the startup, then it would be very stressful because that's like my whole happiness is based off of whether or not the startup is doing well.
I love it. I think that's actually a very, very good perspective. I think like especially first time founders or early stage startup founders, I hardly hear the balance part of it, but I love your answer there. Um, one last question. Would you say when you are early stage, 0 to 1 stage, growth focus, is it more revenue, usage?
I would say revenue.
Hmm. Tell me
Yeah,
more.
because it depends on how much money is left in the bank, but it's if everyone uses your product but you're not making money, you're gonna run out of money.
Hmm. Okay.
So every day is a burn rate, and right in this environment, the goal for at least for us is to be default alive. And so
Hmm.
if we can't see a path towards being default alive without having to raise more money, then what's the point that they used our product? So eventually, if
Interesting.
the ROI for each salesperson and they're hitting quota is positive, then technically you can sort of grow your way out of it, assuming that the pipeline is coming in hot enough. Then we would hit then we would hit that inflection curve and we would be profitable. And then we could start like taking a breather. Okay, fine, let's go out and fix product.
Got it. I like it. Actually, this is also a very unique take, and I really like your answer. And then to finish it off, where we started is what is your bet on social media? Again, like must be an obvious answer, but where would you bet for B2B? YouTube, LinkedIn,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. I guess I'm not going to even ask you to explain. This has been very evident from like the whole conversation today. But Alan, this was a pleasure talking to you, especially like the section where you explained about like a unique take on like creating your own group and like using that as a way to like cross that 0 to 1. I love that part. Appreciate you taking the time to be there and sharing your thoughts and ideas.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.